meet you, and really nice to have an opportunity just to briefly tell you a little bit about my research. I'm very excited to be here. I'm from Valspar University, and in fact we had a postdoc yesterday on emotion coaching, so I'm going to very briefly, in 5 minutes, because I've got to go and catch a plane, tell you a little bit about my work, and really if anyone would like to find out more, I'm more than happy for them to email me, and I will go on at great length. As I said, we're from Valspar University. My background is actually in health and education, so I straddle both disciplines and areas of work, and I found that initially was very difficult, but it's now become a great strength as the two are really coming together now. A piece of research that I've undertaken is very much based on a relational nature of the socially constructed world. So I think it fits in very nicely with this. It's linking physical, social and psychological together. It's also based on the fact that we believe emotions are innate, universal, and they evolve to promote survival through adaptation. So to help us understand the world we find ourselves in. We were interested, and our work is very much informed by John Gottman and actually Dan Siegel, which is why I was so thrilled to be able to fly up here, and didn't realise this was going to. So that's really a big plus for my year already. I don't know if any of you know about the work of John Gottman. He works very much with families and relational aspects of psychology, and that's his big area of work. But one of his early pieces of work was looking at how parenting styles seem to affect children's outcomes. And he observed, he didn't create, he observed that certain types of parenting styles, the children seemed to have a better outcome. They were achieving more academically at schools. They had more friends. They seemed more resilient. They had a better self-regulation. And he actually looked at the way the relationships between those children and the parents, and identified certain styles of parenting, and the one that seemed to be the most productive he called emotion coaching. We were very interested in this. He talked about something called meta-emotion philosophy, and we know about metacognition. Meta-emotion philosophy is actually an awareness of what we think about emotions and how we feel. And I'm sure all of us, particularly those who don't come from England, are aware of our reputation of having a stiff upper lip, that we don't show our emotions. And that's sort of seen as very much a dismissing, disapproving style to emotions. But if you believe that emotions are innate and are there to help guide us, it seems a little bit incongruent that we're going to be dismissing them or thinking we could control them. Janet, unfortunately my colleague Dr. Janet Rose can't be here, but we were very fascinated, because we work in schools, as to how this could translate to another area where relationships are incredibly important, that between the child and the teacher. And we wondered if we could transfer emotion coaching over to schools, because there's a great place, because school is compulsory in this country for a very long time, most of childhood. If we could replicate some of those results, then those children who maybe didn't have emotion coaching parents had another opportunity in which they could develop those skills and expertise. So that was the sort of idea behind our research project. As ever, trying to get money for research is really hard. We were given a small amount, and with the small amount we did a pilot project in Wiltshire with primary and secondary schools. It's a multi-agency, multidiscipline approach based on a community effect. So we had health visitors, we had teachers, we had managers, we had teaching assistants, we had early years workers, we had social workers, we had youth workers. And this isn't a big study, we have other studies going on, but this was a pilot, so it was N equals 71. So we're talking a small project here, but great variety, usually based around the community setting. Okay. We actually developed a teaching program based on John Gottman's program, and it was developed into 3 stages. So we had a training aspect, which was your typical kind of talk and chalk, I'm afraid, but it was trying to get this information of 4 hours. We then had 4 one-hour network meetings that were spread out over 6 months, 6 to 8 months, dependent on the settings. We tried to incorporate whatever the setting needed into their schedule. And we then had a time where we went back and talked to them again. So the model was very much to look at how they could adopt, they could adapt, and if it was sustained, because the overarching principle is sustainable futures. Okay. It was mixed method because the only way you can get money is if you can produce some numbers. So we had to prove our numbers, although we are mainly qualitative researchers. So we had some very helpful quantitative psychologists to help us do the number crunching, because I really am not a number cruncher. Okay. In the actual training aspect, it's based on interpersonal neurobiology. So we very much looked at looking at neuroscience and how that linked with attachment theory and linked into emotion coaching. So our work was very much informed by Dan Siegel's, Porgy's work on the polyvagal theory, and Cozzolino, so just to name but a few. We looked at how stress, the physiological effect of stress on the brain, and how that affected the child's ability to retain information and knowledge, because of course those were the concepts. Now, it's interesting to note, and having been a lecturer who lectures to pre-teach people who are trained to be teachers, there's not a lot out there done about neuroscience, which is quite strange, I think, and unusual. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of animosity, and there's a lot of fear about determinism suddenly coming in. But in fact, we adapted the program in a way that it made people realise that those who've been taught about Piaget and Vygotsky and role modelling and the need for repetition actually linked into plasticity, the connectome, tuning and pruning, mirror neurons. So in many ways, we found, as Bradenock finds, that if you have some of the scientific knowledge behind what you're doing, in many ways it takes the blame away if you haven't been doing it. So for some teachers it was great because it validated them. For some it challenged them, but it gave them an opportunity to reflect on their practice and what informed their practice. And I think we all know from sort of theories of androgy and Mesereau, if we want to look at transformational learning, you've got to question why you believe what you believe. Okay. We introduced the idea of emotional coaching to them. We simplified the model into 3 steps from John Gottman's 5 steps. John Gottman, by the way, is aware of this research and is very keen to know how they're coming out. So the big main step that's different, because teachers and people working with children are incredibly good at problem solving, incredibly good at setting limits. However, it was that first step about validating, empathizing and seeing the emotions that child was feeling that helped the de-escalation, and that very often people thought they did, but having an opportunity time to reflect, they realised. And I'd just like to give you one example. We had a secondary school, and being a teacher myself, I know what it's like when you've got a busy schedule and you're told you've got to go and do some extra training. And she said she sat at the back of the room thinking, here we go again, more waffly, puffly stuff. And she said by the end of it, she said, I do that, I know how they feel. She said one of the things that she realised, having sat there, she assumed she knew what the child was feeling, but she never really checked out or told the child she could see that. Okay. She was in a secondary school. She was a year 11 tutor and head of year, and she started, she said, slowing down and just thinking about it. And the things that actually transpired for her was the children did seem to stop short. They were surprised when they were seen rather than just described by the behaviour. One of the other interesting things as a practitioner, she found she felt more in control. So it's all well and good thinking children have emotions, but we have emotions and they're interactional. So she said she actually felt she had some sort of control. So some practitioners used it as a technique in their toolkit of life. Others, who were maybe more natural emotion coaches, saw it as an approach. So it could be used on many different levels. We do have statistical significance with our research. We created a pre and post questionnaire to measure different changes in meta-emotion philosophy, and that has undergone a component analysis, principal component analysis, and proved to be significant. So that, I know if you're a statistician, that means something. For me, I'm the words person, so it doesn't do much for me, but I know it can give a buzz to a number of people. We noticed the results showed changes in practice, that there was less dismissing, less disapproving, more emotion coaching approaches to children, and in times when there was a lot of emotional upheaval. There were changes in practitioners' meta-emotion philosophy. There was an increase in understanding of emotions, the link of emotions with learning. And we saw changes in children's behaviour, but we did not set out to measure those. As a result of the work we're doing, we've now got some larger projects, and we have something called Attachment Aware Schools running now in Bath and North East Somerset, where it's based on emotion coaching and also work of the specialists who do trauma with children. We actually have also just got a bid to run mindful emotion coaching in the Somerset schools to promote health and well-being. And we've been involved in helping the government develop the NICE guidelines for attachment in schools, all things that we think are so important. We've also been recognised as a recognised resource and approach for the looked after children. And we are working also, one of the great things about emotion coaching is they are transferable skills. They come in all walks of life. If you're with people, whether they're children or grown-ups, emotion coaching actually helps in those relationships. And we're doing a lot of work now with health visitors and GPs in those situations where stress and the stress response. So just to sort of finalise, it actually works with the physiology of the body and the effects of relationship, the energies we were talking about. And in fact, I'm at the moment writing up my PhD, looking at the practitioner's perspective, because although we've got statistical numbers, as I said, I'm a qualitative researcher. And we've just written a book on health and well-being in early childhood that's coming out by Sage in November, that actually shows some of the case studies of our work. So if anyone's interested, please do get in contact. I'm enthusiastic and thrilled to sort of share it with you. And I'll just say again, it's fantastic to be part of this community. So thank you very much.